everybody. My name is Lynn Floyd, and I'm one of the pastors at Radiant Church, and I have the privilege today to share with you some thoughts about Holy Week, specifically what happened on Thursday. What I love about the gospel and about Scripture is you have this great story, this grand story of the gospel, and within that grand story you have all of these little stories that you see as well that are so powerful. And so as we come to Thursday, we can't help but think about the whole meaning of Passover. And Passover is that feast of unleavened bread. It was an annual Jewish festival that commemorated that night that God sent the last of 10 plagues on the Egyptians. And so in this last plague, as you know, as you read the scriptures, it teaches us that the Israelites, when they put the blood on the doorpost, that blood of the lamb, that they were protected from experiencing the reality of that plague, the death of their firstborn. And so that Passover, as we know and as we celebrate this time of year, points to Jesus, and Jesus, who became the ultimate Passover lamb for you and for me, the one who sacrificed his life, laid down his life to liberate us from our bondage. And so we celebrate that Passover this time of year, and that's the big story. That's the big theme here on Thursday. But there's some other things taking place that I think really highlights the significance of this moment for us. And so as I look at this passage, especially in Luke chapter 22, I see these little stories, these little encounters that Jesus had on this day. I think about the preparation, the day before, the preparation before the meal, and how he sent Peter and John to make the preparations. And what we read in Luke 22 in the Gospels is that they found everything exactly as Jesus said that they would find it. And so what's interesting about this story is that we don't see, at least in Luke 22, what their reaction was. They found things just as Jesus said they would find it, but we don't kind of see how they would react. Were they amazed? Were they thinking, oh, wow, what a coincidence? And so we go on in this story, and we see that when Jesus gathered the disciples, that point of during the meal, what was taking place during the meal, it was during this Passover meal that Jesus instituted the Lord's Supper, and he took the bread and he took the wine that was symbolic of his body and his body that would be broken, and his blood that was to be poured out. And we see during the meal that in this powerful moment, you have this other small story that's taking place. You see this argument taking place between the disciples about who's going to be the greatest. And I can't help but read this story and think about the youngest, me being the youngest of three brothers, and some of the quarreling that we did growing up about who was going to get the opportunity and who was the best at this and best at that. And so they were having this quarrel right in the middle of this powerful moment. And not only do you see that story within the great story of what took place during the meal, but you also see what happens after this Passover meal, where Jesus goes out, as was his habit, to the Mount of Olives, where he has this time of intense prayer with the Father in Gethsemane. Well, we also read that during that time, he finds his disciples sleeping. During this moments later, we see where he's confronted by Judas and this mob who have come to betray, who've come to turn Jesus over to the authorities to be arrested. And then we see later on Peter's denial of Jesus, not once, not twice, but 3 times. And what's striking to me about all these little things taking place within this greater story is the fact that Jesus still invited these men to the table. Jesus still, knowing what was about to happen, knowing that he would be betrayed, knowing that his friends that he depended on would, when things got tough, would run away, knowing that Peter would deny him, knowing that beforehand, Jesus still invited these men to the table to fellowship with him, to be with him, to share the message and to cast the vision of what was to come to these very folks who would soon turn and run. This gives me great hope, because knowing that he still invited these men to the table reminds me that the invitation that he gave them is still open to me. Knowing times that I have not been faithful to the Lord, knowing times where I vetted for my own greatness instead of the glory of the Lord, times where I was selfish, times where I saw the obvious work of God in front of me and really it didn't result in worship. And yet Jesus still invites us to that table to be with him. And this invitation to the table is an invitation to be transformed. It's an invitation to be changed. It's an invitation to be with Jesus, to abide with Jesus, to cling to Jesus, not to remain as we are, but to know that he is going to change us day by day. And so that gives me great hope, this gospel story, as we think about the Passover, as we think about the significance of that event and how Jesus used this Passover moment to really preach a message to us that he is the Passover. And this invitation to the table is for all of us. And so when you think about today, know that he has invited you to fellowship with him, regardless of the things that we've done, regardless of our past, regardless of the struggles that we're going through right now. He's invited us to that table today to be with him, to be transformed, to be changed. And so be grateful for that today, and ask the Lord to open up your eyes to what he's doing around you, because he's doing an awful lot, and he's inviting you to himself, to not be the same person you are today. God bless.